Well, here we are again at another Martin Luther King Jr. Sunday. We are a generation and a half removed from the I Have a Dream speech. Now, white people, and I speak as a white person, white people love to quote that I Have a Dream speech. It is aspirational. It was a wonderful speech. It was quite a piece of oratory. And we love it because it's hopeful. But Reverend Dr. King gave that speech in 1963, and he was talking about dreaming about the day. Hi, and I'm back. Oh, Zoom. Okay, where was I? Well, perhaps you got some of what I was saying. 1963, yeah, that was a long time ago. And have we progressed very far since then? In some ways, yes. And in other ways, well, look around. There are 25,000 troops headed to DC. I mean, many of them are there already to guard the nation's capital and protect the inauguration, mainly from white supremacists who are angry that we might possibly be inching toward a more egalitarian nation. Wow. Reverend Dr. King also said this: we all too often have socialism for the rich and rugged free market capitalism for the poor. He said that from also to the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, in February 23rd, 1968. Let me give you the fuller quotation there. And I'm using language of the time. So he uses the word Negro, I'm going to say that. These are his words. Whenever the government provides opportunities in privileges for white people and rich people, they call it subsidized. When they do it for Negro and poor people, they call it welfare. The fact is that everybody in this country lives on welfare. Suburbia was built with federally subsidized credit, and highways that take our white brothers out to the suburbs were built with federally subsidized money to the tune of 90%. Everybody is on welfare in this country. The problem is that we all too often have socialism for the rich and rugged free enterprise capitalism for the poor. That's the problem. Well, that is the problem. And didn't this pandemic really bring that into stark relief for us? All of a sudden, we're looking at essential workers who are barely getting by, many having to work 2 jobs. Because suddenly being a checkout person at the supermarket is essential work. being a delivery driver is essential work. This country was founded on the backs of the working poor and slaves, and we continue to benefit from that system. So until we get serious about dismantling that system, we're going to continue to have problems. And when we do speak out, the people who are benefiting, well, they get irritated. Look at the furor it caused when Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem. But a week ago, insurrectionists, fueled by political office holders, stormed the national capitol. I want you to hear what the Reverend Jackie Lewis wrote for Religious News Service. She wrote a fantastic essay that I think you should read. And frankly, I would have just quoted the entire thing as my sermon today, but that would, we're not paying her for that. And that would not be acceptable, but I want you to read her articles. So, so Beth is going to post the link in the chat and you can read her article on Religion News Service. But she's the senior minister at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City, a church that was just that just had a massive fire, and they're still doing the work of the church. They're still being the church together, even though they don't have a building right now. She said, "I'm so damn tired of living in a country that treats Black grief as a threat and white rage as a sacrament." Let me say that again. I am so damn tired of living in a country that treats Black grief as a threat and white rage as a sacrament. She was referring to the difference between how Black Lives Matter protesters were greeted in the nation's capital and how the insurrectionists were treated, and clearly with some inside help, and taking selfies with a police officer. I believe that officer has now been fired. I'm speaking to the white people among us today. I don't want you to feel ashamed of being white. I don't want you to self-flagellate, but I want you, and I'm doing this myself, I want us to examine our place of privilege. If we're going to do this work, if we are truly going to build the beloved community, if we are truly going to honor the work of Reverend Dr. King, we need to look at all these intersectionalities. We cannot center ourselves. We cannot center our voices. We must use our voices to leverage and promote the voices that aren't being heard. We must use our voices to promote the good. We must examine the structures that we have been benefiting from and put ourselves in another place and look at another point of view and see what the view looks like from there. I need to tell you that $15 an hour as a minimum wage is just barely enough to get by, and not enough to get by in some places. We need to stop judging wages as a means of how good or bad a person is. If we truly believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, then every person deserves a living wage, regardless of what job that person is doing. It doesn't matter how educated a person is or is not, or how difficult we think that job might or might not be. Every person deserves a living wage. We need to stop tying healthcare to being employed. Everyone deserves healthcare in this country. And we need to stop treating every single thing as if the bottom line and commodification of it is the only reasonable response. Capitalism does not have to be the answer for everything. Intersectionality is important. We can't talk about women's rights without looking at the rights of women of color. We cannot erase Black women from the history of women's rights. We can't talk about environmentalism without looking at the impact of environmental decisions on people of color. We can't talk about LGBTQ rights without looking at the impact of decisions on the queer community of color. None of these things exist in a vacuum. If we want to build that beloved community, if we want to make Reverend Dr. King's dream a reality, we need to get busy. Now, I have hope. I have hope for this inauguration on Wednesday. Do you have hope? Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, people are fighting back. That tells me we're doing something right. This is not the time to back down. Let's have a watch party. Let's keep the pressure on. Keep calling your representatives and senators. Keep working for what's right. Pick something that's important to you and work for it. But remember that as you're working for it, to look around and see, is it only white faces that you're seeing there? And if it is, ask yourself, why is that? Huh. If you're doing work and there are people of color with you, and it's all the white voices that are getting heard, it is your responsibility and my responsibility to step back or to say, hey, we haven't heard from. And that doesn't mean that people of color are the token people speaking for all the people of insert your group here. It does mean, though, that we cannot center our white experience in everything. Are you with me? Are you with me? I want to see some thumbs up in the reactions if you're with me. Are you with me? We can do this. We can do this. We can do this.